McCartney Green, and I'm about to read chapter 4 of DND number 1, A Healing in Jesus' Name. Shining steel flashed, then disappeared as the blade tumbled end over end, finally coming to rest in the wall of James Crane's inner office. As James watched his nemesis being interviewed on TV once again, he turned to his not-so-little brother, Tommy. Why? Why is Good Day Hollywood so interested in that overgrown chink? It grated on James's soul the way everyone revered Eric Keno. I swear he gets more TV hype than the Super Bowl, he hissed through clenched teeth. Don't people even have enough brains to remember Pearl Harbor? It makes me crazy. He raised the remote, at first with the intention of throwing it, then merely clicked the off button. James's eyes blazed with hatred. He watched Tommy shift in his chair. Barely restrained violence emanated from James, but he knew his little brother wasn't at all uncomfortable with it, because Tommy had just recently been released from prison. Anyway, James knew Tommy shared the same feelings of hatred. He knew because they'd both been raised by the same man, a man who'd raised them on hatred like mother's milk. Hank Crane, their grandfather, had made sure his grandson shared his views. Old Hank had been a veteran of the big one and a survivor of Pearl Harbor, and he'd hated the Japanese with a passion. When his only son, James and Tommy's father, died in surgery under the care of a Chinese doctor, that hatred expanded to include anyone who looked remotely Asian. Young James and Tommy learned the same hatred. James looked past the fact that his father had been drinking when he'd run that car into a tree, and that the impact had killed their mother instantly. He chose to forget that the doctor had worked tirelessly against great odds to try to save his father's life. Tommy sighed impatiently. Keno had nothing to do with Pearl Harbor, James. He's not even Japanese. He's Hawaiian or something like that. James's eyes narrowed. Tommy shrugged. Sorry. I just want you to get your facts straight, because if we're finally going to do something about him, we need to think clearly. So tell me, what do you intend to do? Eric Keno had been a thorn in James's side since high school, and it seemed his only thought since then had been of revenge. Their senior year, Keno had stolen James's girlfriend from him, beautiful Anne. 12 years later, James had been on the brink of winning her back when she died. The obituary stated cancer as the cause of death, but James knew differently. Hank had taught him how tricky the Asians could be, and Eric must have known Anne was about to leave him. He'd poisoned her. James was sure of it, probably in the guise of these herbal teas that Slant Eyes use so often. James breathed a sigh and looked his brother over. Tommy had been an impressionable 5-year-old when Anne left James, and from that time on, Big Brother had taught Tommy to hate. For more than 20 years, James preached how life isn't fair. He guessed that's how Tommy had finally ended up in prison. James had no idea why Tommy had decided to steal that car. They had money. It was like a spur-of-the-moment joyride kind of thing. And really, Tommy hadn't meant to hurt the guy. It wasn't as if they didn't have the money to buy whatever they pleased, whatever Tommy wanted. James had become a prominent businessman as the owner and CEO of Golden Hotels. It had haunted James when they'd taken his younger brother away in chains. He'd worked tirelessly day and night to acquire his release on probation. And James watched as Tommy slowly made his way to where the knife protruded from the wall. Tommy grabbed the hilt and plucked the knife free, wiping it clean between his thumb and forefinger. Not flinching when a line of blood oozed from the meat of his thumb, he turned to James and smiled. It's true, bro. Keno and his kid have the whole world worshiping at their feet, and I say it's time you took care of him for good. Like, a knife in the wall? That's bull. But a knife in the gut, now, that's what I'm talking about. And I'm here for you, bro, to help you with anything you need. He paused. Anything. James pondered his little brother's offer. Had his short stint in prison made him lethal so quickly? Tommy's blonde hair and blue eyes belied the darkness that lingered inside. Still, James didn't think he'd be taking Tommy up on his offer. Tommy wouldn't abide being left out completely, but James would do his best to keep Tommy in the background, because breaking probation could stick Tommy right back in prison. And even though James's powerful political ties were able to get Tommy out the first time, he didn't want a chance having to ask a second favor. He pulled himself from those thoughts and smiled wickedly at Tommy. I agree that it's time to take action, but these things must be done carefully. Yeah, carefully carving him up, I'll go along with that. Him and his kid, too. James's lips pressed together at Tommy's reference to Ricky. His voice softened and saddened. No, Tommy, that kid, he's a part of her. The only part of her in this world that's left, thanks to Keno. Oh, come on, James. I am so sick of both of them. That little witch left you for him. She didn't care about you. She didn't care if it humiliated you or hurt you. The red rage boiled up and over, engulfing James, as it had over the years. James was on Tommy with the agility and speed of a leopard, his thick hands closing around Tommy's throat. He yanked Tommy's face up close to his own. Do not ever, not ever, speak disrespectfully of her again. She was a pawn. She's a victim. She was way too innocent, and she fell for his lies. So, never again, Tommy. Do you understand? Tommy managed to nod his head in the affirmative and was released immediately. James drew a deep breath. No, he said calmly, as if there had been no interruption in the conversation. No one touches the kid. Kids can't help who their parents are, just like we can't help that our father killed our mother. So, we'll be patient and wait for the right moment. Reports say that the legendary Master Keno will be participating in the mart again this year, and that is a perfect opportunity. We'll slice him up all right, but only figuratively at first, because I want him to suffer before he dies. I want to break him. No. I want to destroy him in the public eye and then break him. And I'm going to break him, Tommy. I'm going to bring him down so low. Whoever he trains for the mart is going to have some real life difficulties. The two men laughed as they made their evil plans, comfortable and content in each other's dangerous company, and certain of how rewarding it was going to be for them to see their enemy suffer. A sick sort of happiness filled the brothers' pounding hearts. New scene. Excuse me. Yo, Dad. Hope everything goes well. Let me know if I can help in any way. In the meantime, I'm going to take in some sun and surf and check out a few ladies. I have a couple of dates lined up. Nothing serious, so don't get excited. Take care, Rick. Eric smiled. Even Ricky's notes were full of sunshine. His son had flown back home alone, but he'd see Ricky soon enough because Eric was going to have to fly back to Cali within the week. He needed to meet with some potential sponsors. Sitting down at the small desk in his hotel room, he made a list of everything that needed to be taken care of, from meeting with his friend Brian about the use of his studio to insurance policies to sponsors and money and everything in between. He began right away making calls and arrangements. The first call was to Justin Lee. He and his younger brother Jason were Eric's dearest friends. The Korean brothers would be a big help during Shelley's training. Justin was an attorney and would handle all contracts and other legalities. Jason, a self-defense consultant for the military and the FBI and several state law enforcement agencies, would also be invaluable, especially as a sparring partner. An hour later, calls taken care of, Eric stretched out across the bed. Closing his eyes, he allowed an adorable, wide-eyed woman with long golden curls to drift into his mind's eye. She was strong and yet somehow vulnerable. Or was she vulnerable and somehow strong? He blew out a breath. There was no question in his mind that hers were the eyes he'd seen in his dreams. It was a relief to end the constant search. She was here, in Atlanta, and she was real, not merely a figment of his imagination. For the first time in a long time, he slept peacefully. And the next morning, as he did every morning, Eric spent time in prayer. This particular morning, though, he sought direction in the coming endeavor of training his new student. Even though it was the Sabbath, he had to take time to finish making the arrangements to start teaching Shelley, and then finally, all arrangements made, Eric settled back to make one more call. He found his pulse rate increasing, and he had to take a calming breath. I have to stop this, he told himself. This woman is now my student, and I have to establish a strict student-teacher relationship and maintain it. Otherwise, I'll accomplish nothing. And that's the least I could do for a student about to face the most grueling year of her life. Still, the thought of her face, her eyes, her turned-up mouth, it made him yearn to be more than her teacher. He sighed and called her cell. When there was no answer, he dialed her home number, and a trio of voices answered. "Hello, you've reached the Addams family." A sound of snapping fingers had Eric chuckling. "Please leave a message. Thanks." Even the simple sound of her voice made him smile. He left her the address of the studio where they would train and told her to be there at 7 a.m. sharp. He asked her to give him a call if she was unable to begin training on Monday, and then hung up. And he sat for a moment staring at the phone. He'd successfully battled being lonely for years, so why did it suddenly feel so pronounced? He lifted the receiver once more, this time to call Ricky. Eric told him all about his new student. "So, what can I do to help?" Ricky offered. Eric gave Ricky a list of things to pack for him, including clothing, household items, charts, and manuals. "And make sure my training bags are completely stocked, right down to the sweat towels, water bottles, and safety equipment. Everything." "Good grief, Dad, it sounds like you're moving out." "Well, I am. For a while, in essence." He paused. "Don't tell me you're going to get all mushy on me. Besides, I thought you always wanted the place to yourself." Ricky laughed. "Yeah, I finally get a chance to have a wild party, and I won't have any time to do it, because they pushed up the time for the shoot for the new movie. I'll barely be home myself, not for about the next 4 weeks anyway." Ricky then promised to get everything together and ready to go by the time Eric arrived on Wednesday morning. "Now, don't forget to brush your teeth and be a good little boy," Ricky chimed, assuming the role of father. Eric smiled. "Yes, son, I promise. And you promise to make sure the house is still standing when I get back." New scene. Shelley threw her purse on the sofa as she passed and headed toward the kitchen with her groceries. Filled with zealous energy, she'd gotten an early start to her day. She'd already spoken to her boss, her ex-boss now, who was excited for her and wished her luck. She'd cleaned house, finished laundry, and been to the grocery store, and the next thing was to call her children out in California and tell them the news. She smiled. The Mart. Shelley Addams is a Mart competitor. She glanced toward the phone, saw the light blinking, and hit the play button on her old answering machine. At the sound of Master Kino's voice, she grabbed a pen and paper and replayed the message, listening intently. And then, just because she liked the sound of his voice, she played it again. Next, she dialed her ex-husband's number to speak to her sons and told the boys the awesome news. "Ricky Kino? You met him?" 6-year-old Joey could not contain his excitement. "Well, actually, I didn't meet him. I only saw him, but I did meet his father and had dinner with him." "Wow, you're so lucky, Mom," Mark said. She told Mark and Joey all about the amazing demonstration Ricky had performed and all about Master Kino asking her to dinner and then asked her to compete in the Mart. "But best of all, guess what?" "What?" they cried. "Master Kino said he and Ricky were going to give you guys free lessons when you come back in August." "No way," Mark said loudly, imitating one of the Ninja Turtles, Shelley thought. "Yes way," she imitated back and then guessed. "Ninja Turtles, right?" "No, Mom," the boys chimed in unison. "That's Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure." "Oh, oops, it sounded like turtles to me." Shelley smiled. This was a game their family had played for years. Someone would use a familiar phrase from an old movie whenever it fit into a daily conversation, and then the others would try to name the movie the line was taken from. She found herself playing it all the time. Their game was even more fun when they played it in the presence of strangers who had no idea what they were laughing at. Shelley couldn't resist playing, even though sometimes it was a little rude. Her husband had haughtily disapproved, which made it that much more enjoyable. Once she said goodbye to the boys, she grabbed her keys and headed out to find the studio, thinking that she didn't want to get lost the next day in the wee hours of the morning and end up late. 20 minutes later, she found it located in a small strip shopping center, 2 doors down from a supermarket. Her heart skipped a beat when she spotted a white van parked out front with a martial arts logo in the window, and next to it, Eric's rental. She started to drive on, but the glass doors opened and the men stepped out, noticing her immediately. Eric waved, and Shelley pulled into a parking space and he opened her door. Hello there, he said, surprise in his voice as he held out his hand and helped her out of the car. Hi, I got your message and I just wanted to make sure I could find the place. She turned and smiled at the other man. I'm Brian, he said, offering his hand. Nice to meet you, I'm Shelley. It's Brian's studio we'll be using, Eric said. He's a former student of mine. Brian turned to her with a smile. He's tough. I wish you luck. Don't scare her, Eric said quickly, and Shelley laughed. Were you at the tournament yesterday, Brian? No, actually, I have a wife who's been very ill. Oh, I hope it's not serious. Eric laughed. Oh, it's very serious. It's incurable. Brian smiled at the look of horror on Shelley's face. He's joking. She's pregnant and having a rough time of it, he clarified, and I'd better get back home. The morning sickness is killing me. I mean her. He turned to his former teacher and bowed to him and then took his hand. Eric, it's really great to see you and really an honor to be able to help. Let me know if I can do anything. He turned to what he was sure would be the next Mart champion. Shelley, he paused dramatically, for what you're about to go through, you have my sympathies. Brian took off before Eric could grab him. They watched him drive away, and Eric turned to Shelley. Would you like to come in? Maybe look around? Sure, she said with a smile. After a tour of the dojang, Eric sat cross-legged in front of the mirrors and patted the spot in front of him. Sit down, Shelley. She did, looking happy and excited. He was silent for several moments, looking into her eyes. What? She asked. He drew a breath. I was just thinking about how I'm going to go about training you. She raised her eyebrows. As many people as you've taught, and you aren't sure how you're going to train me? Well, each person is unique, he answered. Each has different strengths and weaknesses. Oh, that makes sense. So what are my weaknesses? He smiled at her. Well, your question shows a problem right away. What do you mean? Well, some would have asked what are their strengths. You immediately jumped to the negative. She nodded, wide-eyed, and he smiled. We have a lot of work to do. Well, where will we start? Pressing his lips together, I'm so sorry, I have a little bit of a cold. Pressing his lips together, he shrugged and then motioned toward the floor. Lie back. Lie back? He placed his hand on her shoulder and pressed her back against the floor. When she was flat, he spoke to her soothingly. I want you to relax, close your eyes, take deep, slow breaths. He'd planned to test her breathing techniques, but he was having a great deal of trouble keeping his eyes from roaming over her and finally gave in to it. He gazed at her, following a line from her pretty face down her lovely neck. She was wearing a pink t-shirt over white shorts, and he could see her shape well enough. He continued his scrutiny down her shapely thighs to her feet, which he noticed were slightly turned in. She seemed to be fairly firm, had some good muscle development, but there was a lot of work to be done. He brought himself back to his original experiment. Her stomach was rising and falling as she breathed. Good. He placed the flat of his hand on her belly, and she startled briefly, drawing in a quick breath. Shh, lie still, he ordered softly. She rested her head back and closed her eyes. What test is this? No talking. Be still. He smiled and patted her stomach. Be still, but don't stop breathing. She hadn't realized that she'd stopped. It felt as if her breaths were coming in huge gulps, and she was sure Master Kino could hear her heartbeat because it was pounding in her ears. He pushed his hand against her and commanded, push up using your abdominal muscles. Try to make my hand rise. Well now, that brought her back to reality. She did as ordered. Try again, he said softly. Good. His hand left abruptly, and she sat up to face him. So what kind of test was that? Well, the strength and power of your waist and stomach will be vitally important, and I was just wondering if, after giving birth to 3 children, will there be a problem regaining muscle tone in that area? Regaining muscle? After all the ab work I've done trying to get back in shape? When he didn't answer, she prodded. Okay, shoot. You can be straight with me. I can take it. He frowned and nodded. Well, you'll find when I'm training, I'm brutally honest. I just didn't want to get into all that right now. That time will come soon enough, but I'll tell you this. His entire demeanor changed, and Shelley got a glimpse of the world she was about to face. You're in pretty good shape for a 34-year-old mother of 3, but you're nowhere close to where you'll have to be in order to compete on the level of the mart. You're going to have to trust me, do everything I say, and take the initiative to work hard on your own, too. Can I count on you to do that? She frowned. Of course, she'd already agreed to have him train her. However, she didn't like the way he put it. For some reason, she did trust him, but the words, "do everything I say," grated on her nerves. Still, she couldn't go back now, so she pushed the feeling away. "I cross my heart," she finally said. He shook his head. "I'm not playing around, Shelley. Can I count on you to stick it out?" She nodded. That one was no problem. She could stick it out. That was what she did best. "Oh, you can count on it." He looked deep into her eyes and then nodded in satisfaction. "I'm sure I can." "So what will we start on tomorrow?" she dared to ask. "Well, the first few days will be like a test. I need to find out where you are as far as strength and power, speed, flexibility, and knowledge. You see, I can't decide which way to go if I don't know where we are. You'll be weighed and measured. We'll max out on the weights, time you in the 40, drill you on forms and techniques, and test your flexibility and your knowledge." She smiled in excitement and anticipation. He frowned. I think I need to burst that bubble just a little. I know you think this is going to be great fun, and it will be at times. It will also be hard work and pain and stress, and you'll get angry and frustrated and will probably shed some tears. But if you don't quit, we will succeed. He eyed her to see if he'd scared her off. "Well, I can promise you that I won't quit. And I'll make you the same promise. I won't quit either. I won't give up on you no matter what obstacles we come across." His smile lightened the mood. "Now, go home, get plenty of rest tonight, and I'll see you at 7 in the morning. And don't be late." Shelley agreed to do just that. At home that evening, she wandered through her house in a daze of anticipation. She drank some water and tried to decide what to eat for dinner. And after staring into the cabinets and rummaging through the refrigerator several times, she gave up. Because she wasn't hungry. Besides, she thought it wouldn't hurt to skip a meal and be a little bit lighter at the weigh-in tomorrow. She wondered about Eric and what the coming days would bring. He was a lovely man to look at. That was a given. She figured she'd eventually get used to his appearance so that every time she saw him, it would stop taking her breath away. Her wariness came from the way he made her feel inside. She had no desire to have those sorts of feelings now, not when her ability to become strong and independent was about to get a huge boost. She understood completely that being trained by Master Eric Kino was an incredible opportunity. He's a complex man, she thought. One minute he's smiling and joking, and the next he's quiet and somber. If she was going to accomplish her goals, she had to concentrate on him as a teacher and forget the ridiculous schoolgirl feelings that were surfacing. He wants a student, she thought. I'll be the best darn student he's ever had. But no matter what he says, I bet I do have fun. Proverbs, chapter 14, verse 23. All hard work brings a profit, but mere talk leads only to poverty. That is the end of chapter 4. That was kind of short.